Hi, I'm Zendor, and yes, you have been expecting me. I'll be your guide, playing the devil's advocate as we peer into the depths of what keeps us afraid, angry, ignorant, and immobile. You draw your own conclusions. So many times, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And in today's world with so much misinformation keeping us apart, it really does matter how we interact with one another.
Namaste and in Lakhets, and welcome to this episode of One World in a New World. I'm your host, Zen Benefiel, and as always, your participation is critical. Please do subscribe, like, share, make a comment. Conversation is where it all starts, and we'll find out more about that in a bit. Also, if you would, please visit planetarycitizens.net. You can download several books there with just a one click. The one specifically I want you to get is Planetary Citizens, Awakening the Heart of Humanity. It will change your life. Now, this week's guest is just an amazing gentleman, internationally known author, Neale Donald Walsch, whose Conversations with God series has touched millions of lives, changed them for the better. And his new book, which is called Letters to a Young Seeker, Departing Thoughts from an Elder, is just jam-packed with 21 different things that you can do to step up in your own life. Now, if you want to stay tuned for an apocalyptic chat, this is one you will not want to miss. We'll be right back. Neale, it is such a pleasure to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Well, you're very welcome, Zen. I'm happy to be here with you, and it's a pleasure as well for me. So thank you for the opportunity to share, what I've been given to share. We all want to do that. We've all been given certain information to share with the world, and we want to have the opportunity to do that. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to do that.
You're welcome. You're right. It's all about sharing today, especially with social media. Caring is sharing, right? So this is just a phenomenal opportunity. And as you know, we talk about diving into the inner life and the things that others think are a bit weird, insane, crazy, right? The labels that we probably got when we were younger and we were doing this stuff, and we stuck with it because we knew the truth in it. It was an experience that we had that could not be denied. So with that, when did you first begin to have the inklings that you were connected more than you realized to everything around us and to the source in particular, God, as we often call it?
Zen, not until much later in my life. I wish I knew when I was in my 20s, 30s, or even in my 40s, what I know now. But it wasn't until later in my life, when I was in my early 50s, that I began to really realize and come to understand, number one, who I really am. Number two, what my relationship is to everything else that exists. And number three, why I'm here. Why am I in this realm of the physical? and what can I do to make the best of it? But I wasn't aware of any of that until I was in my early 50s. So the first half of my life and the first 30 years of my adult life were, me swimming in the abyss,
Mm,
having no idea what I was doing here or why, just surviving. I have
sure.
to say, I've got to be fair to the world and fair to life because I had the opportunity to do things that I loved to do. I was in broadcasting as an
Sure.
on-air personality for years. I was a nationally syndicated radio talk show host. Okay, that was fun for sure. Then I got into print media journalism, and I wound up ultimately. I started off as a reporter, and I wound up winding up my career in print media as a managing editor of a newspaper. So I've had broad experience in both broadcast and print media, and I loved both of those careers. It was just
Sure. And
I
those are
even
really fun areas, right? I mean, that's where you can pour your creative energy into and actually get some reflection of it working, right?
I had even a third fun area and a fourth fun area. My third fun area was I became a photographer and I actually earned money as a photographer. I
Mm,
did portrait. I did what I call environmental portraiture,
mhm.
where I would take pictures of people in an environment that told the viewer of the photograph enough about them that they could really pick up, the kind of person they were. And I
Right.
love
A
doing
thousand
environment.
words, right?
Yeah, I love doing environmental portraiture. And then my fourth career was I was a drummer in a dance band.
I'm a progressive drummer as well. I have a drum kit in our formal dining room still.
Yeah, well, wow. So yeah, and I
Well, and
couldn't
so
believe,
now that explains your perfect timing with everything.
yeah, I couldn't believe that someone would actually give me money to play the drums.
Right.
I was like, wait a minute, this is a great life.
Oh yeah.
And when I was in broadcasting, I have to say that my the owner of the radio station that I worked for,
Hmm.
he asked me one day, my broadcast name was Bob White. That was my AFTRA name. I was a member of AFTRA, the American Federation of Radio and Television Artists, and I had the name of Bob White. He came
I
to
thought
me
you were
one,
talking about a favorite bird that we might have.
and he said that my boss said to me one day, "Well, how come every week when I come to give you your check, you won't look me in the eye? You always turn away." And I say, "Well, you know what? I can't look you in the eye if you're going to actually give me money for what I do.
Mm,
I feel like I'm stealing from you because I'm having a great time.
right.
I
Well,
love,
isn't that the phrase? Do what you love and the money will flow, right?
yeah, exactly."
So
And
that
he
was
looked at me and
peppered
he said,
throughout your life.
"Yeah." And he looked at me and he said, "Oh, you're the kind of employee I love."
Wonderful. Now, I'd like to go back just a little bit. You made a comment about this work that you're doing now didn't start until your 50s. So it struck me as interesting in that not too hard. It was a gentle strike. I had a dear friend, Willie Whitefeather, that I was in my mid 40s, called me up and he was mixed blood Cherokee. And he said, and I have no idea. I was trying to find him, couldn't all of a sudden I get a phone call from him. And the conversation went to, in our tradition, you cannot join or form a council until you're 51.
Interesting.
I thought you'd like that.
Just the age that I was.
Okay. So here's the indigenous tradition that just mirrored your own experience.
Wow. Fascinating.
Huh?
I'm not even a tiny bit surprised when I think about it.
Oh, right. Yeah, it just resonates. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Wow. Wonderful. Yeah.
So how did you
So,
progress into, yeah, we could pause in that moment for a long time, right? Just bask in it. Um, how did you first, I know it's in your stories and things, but I want to hear it from you in person. What happened that brought you into your place of submission, for lack of a better?
well, good question and a nice way to put it. Yeah. Well, I had three events happen in a 10-day period. It was what I like to call the worst 10 days of my life.
Hmm.
It began when my partner and I agreed to go our separate ways. It wasn't a raucous or an angry departure. It
Mhm.
was we just both gently agreed that it wasn't working
Yeah,
out our
sometimes you
marriage.
just have to agree it's not working and let's part
Yeah,
as friends and work it
but
out.
but
Now, that's a rare situation, though.
we were not just boyfriend and girlfriend. However, we were married and we had children together.
Right.
So it was very difficult for me to separate myself, but we agreed that we would both go our separate ways and deal, with joint custody of our children. And so we did.
Hmm.
And so, but 5 days after that relationship ended, I lost my job.
Hmm.
The corporation that I worked for was downsizing.
Hmm.
And even though my boss said that I was one of his best employees, excuse me, and he really meant it. He said, "No, I hate to lose you, but we're restricted to seniority. You were the last person hired, so you're the first person out."
Yeah, first in, yeah, or last in, first out. Yeah.
Yeah, so I lost my job and my relationship within the same 5-day period. But wait, the world wasn't done with me yet.
Yeah.
I was
It all comes
traveling.
in threes, right?
Yeah, I was traveling to a job interview, and I was certain I was going to get the job because I had all the qualifications and this glowing recommendation from the
Hmm.
guy who just had to let me go. So I'm certain I'm going to get hired. I never got to the interview.
Wow.
An elderly gentleman driving down the road made a left turn in front of my car. He misjudged the distance between our two vehicles. I'm driving one way, he's coming the other way. He decided to make a left turn in front of my car. There's no way I could have avoided the crash. And it was not just a fender bender. My entire car was destroyed.
Hmm.
It turned into just a crunch of metal, and I suffered a broken neck. And it wasn't a hairline fracture. I recall the wording on the medical report. It said that I had suffered a 3/4 inch avulsion fracture of the seven cervical vertebrae posteriorly. In other words, a break in my neck large enough to put a pencil through.
Hmm.
And when I woke up in the operating room, the doctor said, Mr. Walsh, you shouldn't even be alive. Most people that have that kind of a break in their neck, 3/4 inch break, often
Die
die.
instantly.
Yeah, because of spinal cord complications. And if
Yeah.
they don't die, at the very least, they're paralyzed from
Right.
the neck down for the rest of their life. You have suffered neither consequence. He looked at me and he said, "What do you intend to do with the rest of your life? Because you've been given an incredible gift. You shouldn't even be discussing this with me."
Hmm.
So, wow,
Open the door.
yeah. And I went home. I got to my little apartment. I wound up getting a little flat. And I woke up one morning and I thought, what do I want to do with the rest of my life?
Hmm.
But I was
Now, let
not.
me ask you a question before, because I want to hear what your answer to your question is too. But in the process going through that, because there's always breadcrumbs that kind of give you indicators, right? That we don't often, the subtle indicators we don't pay attention to, right?
I agree.
Would you agree?
Yes, I agree.
Were there some that in looking back were offered to you that for whatever reason you were still in that old mode and avoided it?
I can't articulate my response to that question. I'm sure there were some,
Okay.
but I didn't really hang on to what they were at the time.
Well, that's great that you haven't. I'm
Yeah,
just the reason the curiosity was there that there may be others who are facing similar things that can avoid the cosmic two before.
wouldn't that be nice?
Right.
Yeah. And I love the way you put that. The cosmic 2x4 is exactly right. I had to be hit over the head with a cosmic 2x4
Mhm.
for me to wake up. It didn't knock me out. It actually woke me up. The
Right.
opposite of what you would think would happen. but
Oh,
I
well, isn't
wound
that
up,
usually what happens with the cosmic two before? It's like,
yeah,
come on, fool, wake up,
yeah,
and here's why.
yeah. So there I was in my little flat, in my little apartment, and I woke up angry. And, I mean, I literally woke up, not just metaphysically, but I literally woke up one night at 4:23 in the morning, furious. And I
Mm.
thought to myself, what have I done to deserve a life of such continuing struggle? I don't understand. I thought I was a pretty good half. I was a decent person. I've not hurt anybody deliberately. What's going on here? What
And
does
that's
it
a
take?
really deep place to ask from, the
Yeah,
submission that you give because you don't know, right? You're genuinely asking.
what does it take to make life work?
Yeah.
And so I woke up, 4:23 in the morning, and I had a yellow legal pad on my coffee table in this one-room flat. And so I wrote an angry letter to God. Just spontaneously.
Yeah, yeah.
I can remember writing, "Dear God, tell
I
me the
remember reading
rules.
about that in your first book too.
Tell me the rules." I said,
Yeah.
"I'll play. I'll play this silly game. Just tell me the rules. What does it take to make it work?" And that's when, I know it sounds strange to some people, but I actually heard a voice in my head. It was kind of a voiceless voice. It wasn't the voice of a man or a woman or a child.
Just an
I couldn't.
impression, right?
Yeah, it was like the sound of one's own thoughts, a voiceless
Yeah.
voice.
Yeah, right.
But the voice was audible in my mind, and I could hear it, and it said to me, "Neale, relax. Yeah, if you want answers to your questions, just relax. I can give you all the answers." And I said, "Yeah, I would like, because I said, I'd like the answers. I sure as hell would like to know what's going on." And the
Right.
voice said, "You are sure as hell about a lot of things, but wouldn't you rather be sure as heaven?"
Mm.
And I
Perfect
thought,
distinction.
what is that supposed to mean? I wrote
Right.
down. And God
Now
said,
that's
take,
the distinction of the words there, that in the ways that we think, right? Because we as human beings are brought up in a bipolar world, right, wrong, good, bad, white, black, all of that, we don't find the way to be centered enough to relax, right? And just be still and let that still small voice speak into
and
us.
yet what's interesting about what you just said is in the absence of that bipolar world, or as
Right.
God put it to me, in the absence of what you are not, what you are is not. It's not experienceable. So you have to, and I said to God, wait a minute. What are you trying to say to me? Come on, help me. I
Right.
said to God, what are you trying to say to me? And I remember God's answers vividly. She said, "Neale, how tall are you?" I said, "I'm 6 feet tall." She said, of course I knew that, but I wanted to make sure that we're talking about the same thing. What does it feel like to experience yourself being 6 foot tall? I said, I love it. I like being 6 feet tall. She said, but what if everything else in the world, every plant, every tree, every building, every person, what if everything else in the universe was precisely 6 feet tall? What if you lived in 6 foot tall world? How would you then experience what it's like to be 6 feet tall? You couldn't experience it. So, in the absence of what you are not, what you are is not experienceable.
Mm.
And I said, well, what does that have to do with my life as a practical matter? And she said, "Neale, let's use a metaphor. Supposing you decide you are the light. Can you say that after me?" And I said, "Yeah, I can. I am the light. I don't know what it means, but I am the light." God said, "Okay, so let's say that you are the light. But if you are a candle in the sun, you can't experience yourself as the light because there's nothing else there but 50 cajillion other candles.
Right.
Therefore, what you will call forth in your life, if you've chosen to be the light, is the darkness. So, Neale, raise not your fist to heaven and curse the darkness not, but be a light unto the darkness, that you might know who you really are, and that all those whose lives you touch might know who they really are as well. And I sat with that and I thought, good God. And she said, yep, that would be me.
Yep. You got it. Right.
I said, but she said, I said, you're too good to be true, man. And he said to me, Neale, if God can't be too good to be true, Neale can. Who in your hell can be? So you get to be the choice. You get to choose to be too good to be true. And that's what opened my mind and my soul to my conversation with God.
Mm.
It
The
was,
wanting to know more, right? It's
and I asked every
all of
question.
these searches start with the curiosity to know self better. You know, Irvin Laszlo even says same thing. You know, the higher self is really where we are, and we just aren't able to fully embody that yet
Until we are.
until we are. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the being part that comes before the doing that we too often get caught up in as you were prior to this.
Yes, that's why we're called human beings and we're not called human doings.
Right, exactly.
God
There's a
introduced
lot
me
of
to
doo-doo
what
there,
she
though, right?
called, I was introduced to what God called the be, do, have paradigm.
Mm-hmm.
And God said, you have it backward. You've had it backward all your life. You think that it's do, be, have, but it's be, do, have. It starts off with what you're choosing to be. And when you choose to be who you really are, which is an individuation of divinity, then you will do what an individuation of divinity does, and you will wind up having what an individuation of divinity has.
Exactly. And that's an experience that is edified with every choice you make toward that. Would you agree?
I couldn't agree more.
And it's an amazing path that if you're not on it, it's hard to describe or articulate well enough for others to even begin to understand, let alone grok it.
But everything, how I can describe it to people when they ask me is, I would describe it in this way. Everything that I was stressing and straining for and working so hard for began to fall in on me automatically without any effort whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, then I realized, you know what? I was told this. I mean, we were all told, the human species was told this by a guy who was walking around here around 2,000 years ago, who put it
Even
quite,
further, that was in the Vedas, which
yeah,
were Sanskrit poems written 15,000 years ago. And Vedantic
yeah.
philosophies basically were all divine threads, incarnate, connected to source, capable of God consciousness, which is exactly what you're talking about.
And he put it, I thought, eloquently when he said, seek ye first
Mm,
the kingdom of heaven, and all these things will be added unto you.
absolutely.
And so there it is,
Yeah.
given to us, you're right, thousands and thousands of years ago. And the question is not whether we had been given this information thousands of years ago. The question is, what's taking us so long
Mm.
to embrace it as our ultimate reality?
Do you think that the part of humanity that was resistant to it was looking for the proof from more of a demonstrable science way? And now that we've got quantum physics that's echoing the Vedantic philosophy, we're a little more open to that. And then COVID hit and gave us all that opportunity to sit sequestrated and ponder who we are, what we
Yeah, I
stand
think we're
for.
going through this, what I call the storm before the calm.
Yeah,
There's an old saying about the calm before the storm, but I think we're going through the storm before the calm.
chaos to order.
Yeah,
Right? We don't
precisely.
change until we've had enough.
Yeah. And the question is, when are we going to have enough? And I think we're getting to that point very quickly right now.
Hmm.
During this period of time, I give us, 10, 15 years at the most, if that, before we wake up and we reach critical mass and the first domino falls and the rest of the dominoes finally
I
follow.
have an interesting opinion on that based on my life, in that in those 10 and 15 years, we can actually have world peace
I agree with you.
because of the activity that's happening, like what you've done with Humanity's Team and what I've been able to do with Planetary Citizens so far. And we're just getting started.
Yes, I agree with you. I couldn't agree more. We are on the verge of creating world peace.
Hmm. Now,
And you
have
know
you
what?
looked at
Excuse me for saying it this way, but it's about time.
oh, yeah, absolutely. And I'd almost put a superlative in front of that. Um, Now, would you consider that in this process, it's also, if we look, right, because a lot of people don't dig into history and look at things and what's been happening, whether it's been a planetary civilization evolving, or prophecies, or calendars, or all of those kinds of things. And I suspect you probably have at least looked at those things. What can we find, do you believe or think or have found that edifies that we are in the storm before the calm and that the calm is actually coming?
What we have to find, what we can find, is our own inner awareness
Mm,
of who we are, why we're here, and what it would take for us to manifest that globally.
absolutely. It starts inside. That's the only place it can, right?
Yeah, I got very clear this is not who I am. And
Yeah.
when I give my talks, I say to people, you know what, guys, let's get real clear. This is not who you are, and this is not who you are.
Hmm.
You are neither your body nor are you your mind. In fact, you've got to be literally out of your mind to realize who you are
Right.
and to
Or in the
experience.
fuller mind, right? Like, again, Urban says, that there's this massive consciousness that we are, that's energy. I made the mistake when I was interviewing him. I said, well, quantum physics has proven that we're 99% space and 1% material. And he looks at me and he says, I'd say we're 100% energy. Can't argue with that.
No, the essential essence, the
Yeah.
primal force. What I was told is the primal force, the essential energy. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. We are entirely energy. And when we understand that, we begin to remember, not even to learn, because life is not a school, but we
You're
begin
right.
to,
A remembering.
yeah, and we literally remember. That is, we become a member once again
Hmm.
of the global collective and the body of God.
Right.
And so we remember who we really are. And then we begin to project, oh, I see. Every minute of my life, I'm projecting energy, not just receiving energy, but I'm projecting energy. And when I understand the universal principle that what goes around comes around, I begin to project the energy that I wish to receive.
Right.
Oh,
Instead
I
of
know.
asking for that cosmic two before,
Hello, precisely.
because that's a result of the same thing, right? Unconsciously.
Yes. So when we do it consciously, we begin to be using the wonderful tool of metaphysics in the way it was intended to be used.
Mm-hmm.
I call that the God solution. I actually wrote a book called The God Solution.
Yep. And it is. Now, how in this day and time do you feel that this understanding can be activated internally? I know in your new book you've got, 21 different things that you can do to do that. What do you think is that primal first step that one can make to open themselves to their greater self?
Commitment, deep commitment.
Mhm. Great answer. And you're absolutely true. Now, what's commitment? Because today we hear the word, the C word, right? But we don't do it. Our words are cheap. We commit to something, then, oh, this is too uncomfortable. I'm not going to do this. And we back off. Well, in that friction is the opportunity to grow in the commitment, not walk away from it.
I agree with what you just said. And ultimately, we choose to commit to the commitment. And we choose to not talk ourselves out of it. And it can be, of course, for all of us, a real test. How
Absolutely.
committed am I to being a walking demonstration of who we all are, individuations of divinity?
Sure.
And how committed am I to seeing in every moment of life, especially the unwelcome moments
Yeah,
and the unwelcome events, how committed am I to seeing how I can be served by that unwelcome event?
exactly.
And that's the question that I ask myself whenever I've been encountering something that is unwelcome. I ask myself what I call life's magic question. What does this have to do with the agenda in my soul?
Hmm.
What does this have to do with the agenda of my soul? And that question can be asked at any point in time, including in this very moment right now.
Right.
What am I doing here on this program with you? Now, what does this have to do with the agenda of my soul? When I ask myself that question in every key moment of my life, when I'm interacting with my darling wife, when I'm having a conversation with a guy across the street, when I'm encountering a total stranger at the grocery store. Wait a minute. What does this have to do with the agenda of my soul?
Hmm.
And the answer will come to me, Zen, instantaneously.
Absolutely. Totally agree. And I know that from my own experience.
I'm sure
So
you
I can
do.
edify what you're saying is the absolute truth. Now, speaking of absolute truth, we
Your check
often,
is in the mail.
yeah, I'd rather have the female, thank you. Um, so, in the aspect of God, right? Most often people include the other side of that, Satan, right? And like with my white light experience as a teen, beware of Satan. He comes as an angel of light. Well, I got to thinking about that and I thought, okay, well, I'm in college. I got a resource in the university library. I'm going to go down and check it out. They got the A through L and the M through Z's that are 4 inches thick. And so I look up the word Satan. Do you know what the very first realization was from that? It was a Greek word, thetan, Thetan, and it means thinker. Now, John wrote in Greek. So when it was translated, it got turned into a fictitious enemy instead of looking at ourselves.
Fascinating.
Isn't it?
Absolutely. What an insight. What a wonderful articulation of the truth.
Mm.
Nice, nice going, Zen.
Thank you. But you got to be willing to test it. Right? That's the whole thing. Right? You can't just accept blindly. If you think you know truth, then test it.
Yeah, I was told, well, and if you don't test it, life will test it for you.
Absolutely.
I was told in my
Absolutely.
conversations with God that there's number one, no such thing as Satan, and number two, there's no such thing as hell. And
Right.
I was on a Today Show a few years ago, and they interviewed me on the Today Show on NBC, and
Fascinating experience, I'll bet.
yeah, and they said, okay, now, Mr. Walsh, you claim to have had a conversation with God. What's God's message to the world? What's
Mm.
God's most important message to the world? He said, we have about 30 seconds left. And I thought to myself, of course, I was in broadcasting. I spent
Right. You
17
got a
years.
30-second clip coming.
Yeah.
Go.
Okay. Yeah. Not only that, but my first thought was, you stinker. You
Right.
would wait
Well,
until you
yeah, what
have
a way to end an interview, put you on the spot like that with the diminishing question and not giving you enough time to answer it.
you would ask me that question with 30 seconds.
Right.
I'm not, and my mind is going, what answer am I going to give this guy in 30 seconds? God's most important message to the world. And I looked at him and I said, It came to me, of course.
Sure.
God never lets you down in a moment like
Uh,
that. And I said, oh, you know what? I don't need 30 seconds. I don't even need one paragraph. I can give you God's most important message to the world in 5 words. And the interviewer said, all right, ladies and gentlemen, Neale Donald Walsch, who claims to be talking to God. What's God's most important message to the world, Neale? And I looked at the camera and I said, God's most important message to the world in 5 words? You've got me all wrong.
what a spin.
And he didn't know where to go with that. I said, because I said, you know what, my friend, if I'm wrong, the conversation is over. If I'm right, the conversation has just begun.
Absolutely. What a wonderful answer for that. And the words coming to you like that was absolute perfection.
I wound up producing a book titled God's Message to the World, You've got me all wrong.
Hmm.
I do not judge, I do not condemn, and I do not punish anyone for anything.
And that is the life. That's love, right?
Pure
That's
love.
the pure love, the unconditional energy. Dan Witter calls it pure shareable energy, right? Because it is. And why, let me, how can we begin to step into that more faithfully with a half-hearted commitment leading to that fuller commitment and the anchoring of it in our lives?
We're trying it out one person at a time. God said to me, Neale, you can't even love the person on the pillow next to you that way. How about starting there?
Mm,
Start one person at a time. I dare you to start it with the person on the pillow next to you,
mhm.
one person at a time. So I was able at that point to turn to the lady on the pillow next to me, my darling wife, and I was able to look at her and say, darling, I love you no matter what. I don't love you because of what I can get from you or what you give to me. That's just loving me, using
Mhm.
you as a tool.
Right.
But I want you to know I've decided that I want to and I'm going to love you no matter what.
Mm.
And my sweetheart looked at me and she said, I'm not a naive woman. And I knew a lot of other men before I met you. We didn't meet until we were later in life. She said, but you're the first man who's ever said anything like that to me in my entire life. And I looked at her and I said, and you're the first woman I ever said it to. But I'm starting now in my commitment to love everyone, no matter what.
I
And
love how
boy,
that started.
is the world giving me the opportunity to demonstrate that.
Absolutely. And your new book is also, quite significant. And, just in reflecting, I mentioned that my wife's from Russia, or the USSR initially. And when we first met and I heard her name, it was like, oh, perfect. Because my mission is to help facilitate a new world order of harmony among people and planet. That's what Planetary Citizens is all about. And when I heard her name, because she'd walked in front of me in the room, and my heart literally flipped in my chest. I mean, there was a whole cosmic scenario
Yeah,
conspiracy,
you
right,
knew
around
instantly.
us meeting.
You knew instantly.
Oh, instantly. And then, but it wasn't until that I heard her. That was when she just walked in front of me, and it took 20 minutes to hear her name. And when I did, it was like, oh, she's Russian, cool, perfect partner because they're supposed to be our adversary. Now, how can we use that to prove that we're not adversaries, that we're actually human beings that can learn how to get along no matter the culture, no matter the upbringing, no matter the politics? It's just about love.
The first message of Conversations with God. Neale, we are all one.
Mm.
There's nobody else in the room.
Right.
There's only another version of you.
Now, from that place of one, how does the rest look?
It depends on what we choose to see.
Exactly. Thank you for that. And that's perfect. Now, Mayans have a great phrase, right? In la quechalakin. It means, I am another you, and together we are one.
Voila.
Mm-hmm.
As the French
Namaste
would
is the
say.
same thing, right? There's
Yeah.
all kinds of phrases and words from different cultures and times and places that edify that we're all one.
There's nobody else in the room.
So how are we going to party together, right?
That becomes the question that life offers us an opportunity to answer. And Mr. Gandhi put it perfectly in terms of the advice he gave us.
Mm-hmm.
Be the change you wish to see in the world.
Yep. And it's not that hard.
No.
Now, going forward and with your new book and with the things in it, honestly, I used my AI tools and I had to say, okay, how did Planetary Citizen match up with your work? Right? It's the normal analysis investigation that I do is like, okay, where do we fit? How do we harmonize? Where are we coherent? And how do we complement each other? Because that's oneness, in my opinion. And, if conversations with God help people remember who they are, and letters to a young seeker helps people remember how to live, right? Then what do you believe humanity needs now to remember together?
My own experience is what humanity needs now is to remember how we felt about ourselves when we were age 7.
Hmm.
When I was 7, I thought I was wonderful. I really thought I was special. I thought I was wonderful. And then the world forced me to change my mind about that. Forced me to change my mind even about myself.
Mm-hmm.
So the first step in my experience is to fall in love again with the person in the mirror. And when
Now,
I could
we hear
allow myself,
self-love, and we often think that that's, just full of ego, right?
yeah,
Oh, self-love, what do you mean?
exactly, exactly. And we call that ego,
Mm-hmm.
but it is not ego, it's ego run amok that we have to avoid. But when we simply fall in love with ourselves, then God said, when I looked in the mirror and I could fall in love with myself, God said to me, at last, what took you so long?
Now, there's a sense in that. It's not a thinking, it's not a feeling. It's beyond that, in a sense place.
It's a level of awareness. Yes, it's not something we think about. We
Mm-hmm.
are simply aware of it. It's like going outside and being aware of the sunrise. We're simply aware. We don't think about the sun coming up. We're simply aware.
Right.
Ah, it's a beautiful sunrise. And so it's a level of awareness. And when I can embrace that awareness as it applies to everyone else in my life, everyone else that I'm aware of, for that matter, in my life, even people with whom I disagree, I've come to an awareness that differences do not have to create divisions, that contrasts do not have to create conflicts,
Absolutely.
and that,
They actually bring the growth, right? The opportunity to find the similarities in that and use them for the mutual growth of both.
yes, and active proponents do not have to become rabid opponents.
Mm-hmm.
We can agree to disagree agreeably.
Right. Absolutely. In the throes of this, I mentioned there's a sense. You say it's the awareness and spot on, right? That's what it is. Now, I mentioned the indigenous traditions earlier. I'm going to go off on a little tangent here for a moment, and I'll bring it back to the circle. Indigenous philosophy is that we have three brains: the gut, the heart, and the head. And that the gut is the first brain, the intuition, the sense, the gut feeling,
Yeah,
right? We all get it,
yeah,
and
I
we
call it
don't
the
pay
tummy
attention to it.
test. I call it the tummy test. I give everything the tummy test.
Right.
How do you feel? I
Yeah.
was
I
told,
did that with my daughters. I said, yeah, you asked me a question. Well, how's your belly? What's your belly say?
yeah, feelings are the language of the soul.
Yes. Now, feelings, let's make a distinction there so we don't confuse that with emotions.
Precisely. Yeah, I'm glad I didn't use the word emotions.
Right.
Feelings are the language of the soul. And so I give everything the tummy test. How does your tummy feel? Your tummy will tell you in 1/2 of a second
Yeah.
what's true for you.
And then you can distill that in your heart and decide, okay, now that's where that distillation takes place. What's true for me?
And
And then
then
you feed it into the quantum computer sitting on your shoulders, and
it
it does
rises
its
up.
job as to, okay, now what do I do with this?
Bingo, as we say in America.
Right.
Bingo.
All right, 35. Now, um, that probably wasn't even the right call out, right? Um, in that process of sensing and feeling it and the being that comes forth in that, where do you find these letters to a seeker, a young seeker, can be most effective in getting them to make that inner inquiry and to begin to use those points of order that you offer?
It can be most effective when they try it out. Try them out.
Hmm.
Don't just read about them.
Yeah,
Actually try them
test
out.
it.
And trust me when I tell you, which I do say to the young reader in the book, trust me when I tell you, I wish I knew these things when I was 25.
I was just going to say, is this a book actually that's written to your younger self?
Precisely. And I wish that I had been aware of these things when I was in my 20s or my 30s, or even frankly in my 40s.
Right.
I had to wait until I was past my 50th year on the planet to come to an awareness that would have served me mightily. And you know what?
But at least you did
Yes, well, better late than never. But
it.
you know what? I've got to be honest, as opposed to the lies I've been telling you since we began. But I've got to be honest now. I would have hurt a lot fewer people
Hmm.
in my 20s, 30s, and 40s if I had known then what I know today.
Sure.
I would have hurt a lot fewer people with things that I did and said and thought.
Hmm.
I wish I could reach back and take it all back. I remember a poignant experience in my life when my first wife, the lady that I married when I was 21, we made it through around 7 years and then we had to say goodbye to each other. But she was the mother of my children, and I was there when she died.
Mm.
because she came to live with my daughter, and my daughter lived in the same town that I lived in. And my daughter called me and she said, Mom, it's dying. Can you come by the house? I said, I'll be there in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to be there when my first wife left the planet. And I looked at her and I said to her as she was leaving, I'm so sorry for what I did to make it not work between us. And she looked at me and she said, Sweetheart, I forgave you 30 years ago. It's time to forgive yourself. And that was our closing moment.
Mm.
What a moment.
Mm. What a blessing.
And I think she knew exactly how she was blessing me
Yeah.
when she made
Giving
that
you
statement.
permission.
Yes. So, you know what? We make the commitment and we keep the commitment sooner or later. And I hope for me it can be sooner than later. Zen, I'm 82 years old.
Hey,
And
wait,
so I
you're
wrote,
82 years young,
yeah, I'll
right?
go there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wrote that book, Letters to a Young Seeker, because I wanted people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s to know then what I know now.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I'm somehow smarter, but I am more wise, I'm more aware, I'm more understanding, I'm more clear about what is true. And I put those truths in that book.
Now, in bringing our oneness into the flow of our lives today, what are some of the things that you recognize in how it's beginning, if it is, first of all, to appear around the world? What are the types of things that you've noticed that have changed recently that indicates we're on a different path now?
The opposition that we're starting to see to violence, to negativity, to selfishness, we're starting to see a higher level of gentle no,
Mm.
what I call the gentle no. I'm seeing more and more people saying gently, no,
Mm.
no, thank you.
I thought you were talking about a gentle gnome.
The gentle no.
It's that
I'm,
little guy. It's that still small voice, right? He's kind of gnomish,
yeah,
right?
I'm seeing more and more people say, I'm sorry. There's a better way to be human.
Mm. And there is, and there's demonstrations. The way COVID happened and what and how all these different groups started popping up of people seeking each other out because they had certain skill sets and talents and resonance and they want to participate in this, let's call it an upheaval of love.
Voila. An upheaval of love is exactly how I would describe it. Yeah, that's
Those words come.
perfectly
Yeah, I'm
put.
like you. It's just the words come. I don't know where they just happen. Um, and I love it. I am so blessed to be in this presence with you and to have this kind of soul felt conversation.
Thank you for the opportunity to share this time with you, my friend.
Well, I hope we're not done quite yet. So, in the movement forward, and your involvement with Humanities Team and these types of other organizations that I'm sure you're associated with, how do you see the collective coming together to provide ways for the rest of us to add our love to?
Mm. how I see humanity coming together is that humanity is, in fact, joining with each other in all the ways that we agree with. I'm seeing more joining going on and less separating taking place. I think we're coming to a clarity, and we're demonstrating that clarity. That separation is not the answer.
No. Cool. And you mentioned Gandhi earlier. I have a cohort partner uh, stationed in St. Petersburg, where his body's at, right? Who founded the Gandhian Global Harmony Association. And originally, and still are, they're about nuclear disarmament, which is like the final aspect of, okay, we're done with this crap. Now,
Yeah,
how
but do we
could
have to
we,
start a war to create nuclear disarmament?
stranger things have happened, right? Can we finally address this aggressive, let's say nefarious energy for want of control? How do we transcend that?
By causing everyone whose life we touch to see how non-beneficial it is to use violence to bring an end to violence, to use anger to bring an end to anger. Einstein put it perfectly.
Yeah.
Einstein
And
said,
use the same thinking to fix the problems that created them. Right? Sorry, I took those.
you took my punchline away, but that's
I
exactly,
did. So, uh, my bad.
no, that's exactly where I was going.
Yeah.
Einstein said you can't use the same energy that created the problem to solve the problem. So you're not going to end anger with anger. You're not going to bring an end to violence with violence. Guys, it's time to wake up. But that's what programs like this
Mm-hmm.
brings us an opportunity to do. So thank you for what you're doing in the world, the books you're writing, the programs you're doing, the talks you're giving, and the way you are being in the world. Zen, all kidding aside, we need more like you.
I'm hoping that cancel the hoping. I'm watching it happen with the people that I'm gathering, with planetary citizens, with all of these programs that I've done. This is number 246 now. We're in our 6th year. And I took the first 3 years, compiled them, and did analysis on it to see all the different areas of 8 different areas and a golden thread chapter at the end of each of the first 3 volumes. And basically everyone was saying it's a collective time where we're all coming together to work towards harmony and coherence in the world.
You're not only watching it happen, you're making it happen.
Absolutely.
And that's the difference. When we invite people to shift from watching it happen to making it happen.
Yeah, life is a participatory sport, right? It's not to suffer, right? Life's not about suffering. It's about sanctification.
Voila,
Wonderful.
as the French would say.
Yeah. Oh, this has just been a wonderful time with you, Neale. I can't express enough the gratitude that I have for you and the work that you do and for spending time with me today.
I've enjoyed it immensely. Thank you for the opportunity.
My pleasure, and thank you again.
Okay, my friend.
And namaste and in la catch. And thanks for sticking with us for this episode of One World in a New World. And by all means, do comment, like, share, subscribe. That's how we can ripple this love through the thoughtmosphere of life and the planet. One simple step you can make right now as you're listening. And by all means, do do stop by Planetary Citizens and plant yourself there for a little bit. Download the books, read them, share them with others. It's a one click, there's no cost. Love is pure shareable energy, and you'll find that throughout those books. And for myself and Neale Donald Walsch today, we love you, and I'll see you next time. Whether you're a leader steering a team, an entrepreneur chasing a vision, or an individual ready to level up, I can help you align purpose and performance so that you can navigate change with confidence, clarity, and yes, a little bit of Zen. Life's complex. Your next step doesn't have to be.